Yeah, hello, welcome back. Today, another few cases, this time small cases or variants of the same topic. Let's begin with the first small case. That's an employee from Essen in Germany. He is a bit fed up with Essen in Germany or with Germany as a whole, so he decides to move to go to another country, to Switzerland. And naturally, moving requires that you have to carry your furniture and all your belongings there. So he orders a haulier from Bochum in Germany to transport all his furniture and chattels from Essen to Zurich. The haulier charges a price of 4,000 euro. Well, what does that mean? What happens here? Let's analyze the contract first again. That's the haulier Bochum. He works for an employee based at the moment at Essen still, and it's simply a service, so we don't need to worry about borders. We just can't analyze taxability. Number one is the right rule to test. The first three criteria are simple as always. The haulier is an entrepreneur. He acts within the scope of his enterprise. Then he asks for consideration because he asks for a price. Now the two decisive things comes: is it a service or a delivery? And we know it's a service, because just carrying goods from one place to another does not mean that you deliver them. You can't transfer ownership if you are not owner, and that's naturally why every haulier always does a service, never a delivery. Place of service, 3A1 would be the basic rule, because the customer is a private person here. However, we must not forget to look for special rules. Here some special rule exists. 3B is for transport of goods and persons in certain circumstances. 3B1 is transport of goods if we have a private customer. There is even a more special rule in 3B3 if the good is on the order of a private customer carried from one EU state into another. However, that's not our case here, because Switzerland is, as everybody knows, not EU country. So we fall back on 3B1, which says the transport of a good is effectuated where that transport happens, which basically means each kilometer of the distance has to be taxed in the country where it is located. So the kilometers of the distance which are in Germany are taxable. That part of the transportation journey which happens in Switzerland is not even taxable. So partly taxable in Germany. Do we have a tax exemption? Paragraph 4 number 3, you remember that was a tax exemption for cross-border transports if the good which is transported is a good of exportation. And a good of exportation is everything which leaves the EU definitively and has to be declared as an export to the tax authorities, so it need not be in the course of a delivery. Also, bringing your own goods permanently abroad would be a good of exportation, so that would be free of tax. So the haulier service here is tax-free. That's very good, because otherwise we would have had to split up the 4,000 into a remuneration for the German part of the distance and another part for the Swiss part of the distance, and due to the tax exemption we do not need to do that. Everything else is probably no longer of much interest. However, we enter the case again when it comes to input tax claims. Can our haulier, in spite of the tax exemption, nevertheless claim input tax for input related to his service here? For example, VAT on fuel which he used for this transport. And the answer is yes. 15.3 number 1 says if something is tax exempt under paragraph 4 numbers 1 to 7. Simplified, that's mostly export orientated transactions, so things which you send to other EU states in form of an intra-community delivery, or which you export to other countries, third countries, that usually still qualifies for input tax deduction in spite of the fact that your output is tax-free. Well, that means we dealt with that very easily. So what else can we offer? We have now variant number 2. A private person again moves from Düsseldorf now to Spain, Madrid. The order this time goes to somebody from Poland, and he has the job to bring the furniture and everything else from Düsseldorf to the new habitation in Madrid. The haulier charges this time 3,000 euro for this service. And by the way, why is it 3? I don't know. I wanted to have another figure than in the first variant. And I must genuinely say I have no idea what a haulier would charge. Might be 30,000, might be 10, might be 1,000. So please do not be disappointed, shocked, or irritated that this figure is completely unrealistic. I don't want to ruin the market for hauliers, or I don't want to shock private persons. It's an entirely fictitious number, so we just needed a figure. Well, the important thing is what happens here. The haulier from Poland does something for a customer in Germany. That's a private person. So we have again a service. Goods are transported from Düsseldorf to Madrid. And we check taxability first. Naturally, the first 3 conditions are easily fulfilled and tested. Haulier is entrepreneur, acts for consideration, does this within the scope of his enterprise activities, because transporting goods is the main business of a haulier, not even an ancillary business. So no problem. We have to do with the service. That's basically also easy. Then the place of the service should be determined by paragraph 3b, because when it comes to transportation services and the customer is private, then 3b is a good idea to have a look into that rule. 3b3 is a special rule for intra-community transports. That means if the transport starts in one member state and ends in another member state, and the customer is a private person, then 3b3 says the place of the service for the whole transport is at the point where the transport begins. That's a simplification. That's Düsseldorf. That means everything is taxable here. We have no tax exemption, especially not for number 3, because this is not goods of exportation. They don't leave the EU. It's a cross-border transaction. However, the goods are not exported to third countries. So no tax exemption under 4 number 3, and there is no other rule in paragraph 4 which we can think of. Tax base is the net amount. So 3,000 is gross minus VAT included. What remains is 2,521.01. Tax rate and tax are 19% for 78.99 or 479. Probably you don't get to prison if you round it up. Taxpayer is the haulier, because reverse charge that the customer has to pay is frequently applied if the entrepreneur is foreigner in the country where the tax arises. However, here we have a Polish, so foreign entrepreneur, but his customer is neither an entrepreneur nor a juridical person, but a private person. And with a private person, at least we in Germany never trigger the reverse charge mechanism, because it's a reasonable assumption that a private person does even know less about German VAT obligations than a foreigner, and that it's even more difficult to enforce a VAT claim against a private person than against a foreigner. So reverse charge does not apply here. So the Polish entrepreneur is taxpayer in Germany. under the normal rules. That means he has to register himself for VAT in Germany, which triggers a mass of bureaucracy. Has to obtain a taxpayer identification number, a VAT identification number additionally, perhaps too, and all that stuff. When the tax arises, or the tax point, when the tax begins to exist, that's the regular rules under 13.1 number 1. The invoice must now be issued under German rules because the whole event is taxable under German rules. So the invoice must follow German invoicing rules, not Polish ones. The tax declaration must be made in Germany. What is interesting, there is, as you know, for certain transactions, electronic ones, and so there is already the one-stop shop scheme that you hand in your tax declaration for Germany, let's say in your home state Poland. But this does not apply to every foreign service. So for this service here, the OSS scheme does not apply. So our haulier has to register in Germany and hand in a tax declaration here under German law. At least nowadays, we have 2024 at the moment when I speak about this. Peculiar aspects do not exist, at least I don't see some. We have input tax claims. Yes, our haulier, if he has any input tax paid in Germany for raw materials, fuel or something connected with this output, it's definitively deductible. There is nothing which could endanger that because it's a taxable transaction which is even fully liable to tax, and then naturally you always get full input tax deduction for all your input. Well, second variant done with successfully. So let's go to variant number 3. This time the haulier comes from Hungary and he gets the order to transport some goods from Finland to Sweden. Now, in order to confuse us even more, the order to the haulier is now given by a firm in Frankfurt in Germany, and the price is 2,000. Again, the warning, I have no idea what a transport from Finland to Sweden or anything would cost. I just needed a figure, so don't be disappointed if in the real world it costs more, or don't be offended if in the real world you as a haulier would do it for 150 or so. It's just a figure. I needed a number. Well, all persons involved have a VAT ID number of their home state and are perfectly willing to use it wherever it is needed for legal purposes. Again, what happens? Haulier, customer, service, Finland, Sweden, that is where the transport is. Taxability is again the test 1.1 number 1. Blah blah. Introduction as always. We have a service 3.9. Place of service 3A2 is the basic rule where the customer has established his business. That's Frankfurt. A special rule in 3B or 3A3. The rest does not apply. So indeed 3A2 remains in force or applicable here, so the whole thing is taxable in Germany. Surprisingly. Very romantic solution. The transport goes from Finland to Sweden. The haulier has nothing to do with Germany, probably never enters into Germany. However, officially the transaction is attributed to Germany for the purposes of taxation. You remember, the place of service has nothing to do with real life. It's just based on what the EU states together thought would be the best and most easy outcome or solution for this problem. Do we have a tax exemption? No, we don't have. Tax base is the net amount. That's everything paid minus the VAT included therein. And as we will see immediately afterwards, the VAT is not included therein because the customer pays the VAT. So has to pay the VAT to the fiscal office directly. And so what he transfers to his haulier can only be the net amount, because 13B applies. The tax rate is 19% because it's German law, 380, and the taxpayer is now the German customer because we have a foreign entrepreneur and we have a customer who is also an entrepreneur, and that triggers paragraph 13b. Here, the reference or the applicable parts of the law are paragraph 13b1 plus 13b5, which says if the customer is an entrepreneur or a juridical person, then indeed the customer becomes the taxpayer. The tax becomes due, or no, not due, but the tax arises, the tax begins to exist at the end of that preliminary declaration period during which the transfer was made. That's basically the same rule as always. However, this time it's laid down not in paragraph 13 but 13b together with the taxpayer rule. The invoice must now be net and must have a hint that reverse charge applies. Otherwise all people involved, including the tax inspector, would be confused. Why does somebody dare to claim money without charging VAT? So it's convenient for all people involved if there is a reference, well, I didn't charge VAT because that is your part as customer under reverse charge mechanism. The tax declaration will also be made by the customer because, well, it's a firm in Frankfurt. Nothing special happens, although I forgot to mention, or better, I forgot to write down that naturally if we have a supplier of a service from one EU state who supplies such a service to an entrepreneur in another EU state, and the whole thing is regulated under 3A2, then there is the obligation to communicate this transaction in the recapitulative statement of our Hungarian haulier in Hungary, and to name the VAT ID number of the German firm plus the net amount of the service. 3.7. The customer in Frankfurt on the Main has the right to deduct the tax again as input tax. That can be seen from paragraph 15.1, number 4. Transaction finished. Number 4. Now we have a forwarding agent from Cologne, and he gets the order to organize the transport of some goods from Japan to China. The order is given now to him by a firm in Düsseldorf in Germany, and the price for the transport is 2,500 euro. Again, all persons involved are willing to use their VAT identification numbers wherever they need. The question is only if they need. Let's analyze what happens. The haulier is from Cologne, or is a forwarding agent, works for a firm in Düsseldorf. Whoever knows something about Germany would know Cologne people are always joking about people in Düsseldorf. Düsseldorf people are always joking on people in Cologne. So probably somebody from Cologne would never be willing to work for somebody in Düsseldorf. However, here we also deal with strange cases. So here that happens. It's a service 3.9. The goods are transported from Japan to China, and the place of the service should normally be in Düsseldorf, because there is where the customer has established his business, and there is no deviation in 3b or so. However, it would be a very strange outcome if a transport which is completely outside the EU would be attributed to a location in the EU and be taxable there. So as the complete transportation takes part outside the EU in a third territory, there is a deviation in 3A8, which says if the complete transport has been effectuated in a third country, then the place of the transport is deemed to be the third territory. So that's not in the inland, and that makes it not taxable in Germany and also not taxable in any other state of the EU. And that means the case is over. Okay. That were, I believe, enough variants for today. So let's finish here, have a break, And this is probably also enough of exercise cases on cross-border services. There might be many more. However, I rather think you prefer probably if we go on and hop over to the next chapter in the next video, dealing with special transactions for which special rules exist. So special problems will be the next chapter, and that's highly important. So let yourself be surprised from the next videos or by the next videos. Have a good time till then, and thank you again for watching, and hope to see you again soon on this channel. Goodbye.